much as they want.
I was incredibly moved by the performance, and I had a lot of laughs, and so I really, really thank you for giving me some laughter at the end of today. Should I sit?
Yeah. Sit anywhere you like.
And I love that Oscar Wilde quote as well. The theater really is the place where all art converges. And so I wanted to just open it up to questions, because it's so rare that I actually get to speak to the audience after a production. And so I would like this to be a conversation, and feel free to ask me any of the questions that you want, either about this production, or about Ruined, or about being a theater artist, which I've done professionally for the last 15 years.
We have a microphone out in the hall here too, so does anybody have a question? We've got Stephanie way over here. I think we can hear your voice even without that.
I love the Fabulation play, Fabulate, and I was wondering how you came up with the concept of it.
It's really interesting. I wrote Fabulation at the very same time I was writing another play called Intimate Apparel. And Intimate Apparel is about a woman at the turn of the 20th century who didn't have the benefits of the civil rights movement and the women's rights movement. And she was thank you. So she was literally restricted by the corset. And I was writing that play about a woman who was corseted in her life, both emotionally, intellectually, and philosophically. And as I was writing it, I found that I needed an escape, and Fabulation became my escape, because I was interested in what happens to a woman who's also trapped, but has the benefits of the civil rights movement and the women's rights movement, but is not taking full advantage of that, or she's exploiting it. And Fabulation literally came out in a breath. It was one of these plays where I sat down to write it, and it just sort of wrote itself very quickly. And I didn't want there to be any space between it. I just wanted it to be like an exhale from beginning to end.
Anything else? Charlene.
Yeah. One of the things that really inspired me about the play and wanted me to get into the play is the fact that you're from Brooklyn, like myself. And I just want to know what inspired you, or what encouraged you to get into theater arts to begin with, because I know a lot of people, especially from where I'm from, they're like, oh, you went to be the theater arts, what are you doing?
Oh, are you from Brooklyn?
Yeah.
Well, I was one of these kids that when I was young, I escaped to the theater. I was more interested in theater than in films, and I was very fortunate at the time that I was growing up. I could go and see a Broadway play for $8. And what we used to do is we'd second act it, which meant that we'd go and see a show only for the second act, and we'd go move into the theater with the crowd when they came out during intermission. And so we saw a lot of second act of plays, or we'd stand outside of the theater and ask people whether they had an extra ticket, and that became our adventure in sport. And so I grew up going to theater and loving live entertainment. I was also very fortunate to have parents who really placed a lot of emphasis on having a well-rounded education, and part of that education was the arts. And so I went to a lot of concerts, I went to the museums, I went to art galleries, and I think that became the milieu that I was most comfortable in. And theater, as the Provost said, is the one medium which all those things do literally come together, where you have to use all sides of your brain, the visual and the language. It's where language and visual arts all come together.
Yeah, I forgot I had
I'd just like to say I saw the play Ruined. It was one of the best plays I've ever seen. And I can see the correlation of the two, of how your mind thinks. Thank you.
Really? Yes.
Now,
I'm a romantic.
a lot of, let me ask you,
Sure.
a lot of reviews have said that your work is so diverse, and it's interesting. Someone says that the plot of Ruined is so totally different than the plot of Fabulation, as far as where it takes place. And do you have anything to say about the connecting thread
I do.
of your
I
works?
feel like I've very recently found out what the connective tissue is between all of my plays. I think that one, it deals with women from the African diaspora, and by and large, women who are marginalized and who are trying to define self. And then I think that the other thread is that most of my plays deal with unrequited love. Is that they're romances, basically. And I've been in denial about that, but I do think that that most of the plays are romances.
Somebody else? Back there, Paul?
You spoke about how Fabulation came out in a breath as an exhalation, but in a play that may not have been so straightforward or so sudden for you. Can you talk about your creative process? Do you have traditions? Do you have a way that you approach most plays, or do they all come out that easily?
They don't. I would say that a lot of my plays are research heavy. In the case of Intimate Apparel and certainly Ruined. Ruined was a play that was 5 years in the journey. For those of you who don't know what the play is about, it's set in a brothel in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it's based upon interviews that I did in East Africa in 2004, and then I got a grant and I went back and I spent more time interviewing Congolese refugee women and also Somali refugee women and Sudan refugee women, specifically looking at gender-specific human rights abuses, rape and sexual violence. And so that play was really, really long in process because one, the subject matter was so difficult and brutal to deal with, and I wanted to find a way to make it accessible. And so I spent a lot of time trying to shape it in a way in which an audience would be engaged but not turned off. In the case of Intimate Apparel, which took place at the beginning of the 20th century, there isn't a lot of literature out there detailing the lives of African Americans in New York City in the early 20th century. So I found that I had to go to the library and spend a lot of time looking through periodicals and trying to find those stories. And so that, once again, was a very laborious process. And so I think that a play like Fabulation it was a joy for me because it could happen quickly, because most of my plays don't. Most of them are very research heavy.
Another question? Right here.
Any of your life experiences part of Fabulation or any other plays?
Well, can I tell you, after I finished this play, I literally got a phone call from my roommate in college who was Miss Black New Jersey, and she began, this is how the phone call began. She goes, "Girl, you're not going to believe what happened." And then she proceeded to give me the plot of Fabulation. So it's not literally based on my life, except for I know a lot of Undines, and the story that she tells about going to Dartmouth is the story of someone I know, who, when his parents came to see him for his college graduation, and they brought a whole busload of people, he literally locked himself in his dorm room and would not come out. And so for years I sat on that story and was trying to figure out a way to integrate it into a play.
This is the first play that I've seen that you've written, and job well done.
Thank you.
And I'm just wondering, has it crossed your mind? Are you thinking about writing the opposite version of Fabulation?
Fabulation? Well, the opposite version is Intimate Apparel. It's companion piece. The play that takes place 100 years prior to the beginning of Fabulation.
You can buy both plays together.
You can buy both plays.
Thank you. It was really terrific, and it's a wonderful production. What are you working on now, or what are you thinking about?
Oh, I'm working on the screenplay for Ruined, which is going to be hopefully an HBO movie. To star someone who's very big and whose name I can't say, but it will be very exciting. Is Mama Nottage. And then I have another play, which is going to probably open next season in New York, which is a comedy.
This is actually the first appearance I've actually watched, and I very much enjoyed every bit of it. No wonder Professor Klein, my prof, insisted that we come out and witness this. My question is that, are you planning to just leave Fabulation like this? Should there be a continuation, like part 2 of it? Like, finding out what happened to the baby, how the baby grew up? Thank you very much.
Maybe there will eventually be sort of fabulation. What happened to Undine's baby?
I wanted to know if you have any advice for theater arts majors such as myself, and since I'm an aspiring director, I wanted to know if you had any words of wisdom.
I do have words of wisdom. The first one is that number one, it's a battle of attrition, that a lot of people give up in this business before it's time for it to happen. It generally takes 10 years to succeed. So the young people that you see who are stars at 21 years old means that they began their careers at 8, 9, 10 years old. You really have to stay there for the long fight. The other thing I would recommend is see as much theater as possible, and not just the obvious things. Really be an explorer. You go to the different boroughs, go and look at different kind of traditions, go to Coney Island, see the freak show, see the circus, go to Broadway, go to dance. Try and really steep yourself in the language of the theater as much as you can. And then pursue being, if you're a director, I would recommend right now, pursue being an assistant director. There are a lot of opportunities, and I bet you if you wrote to directors, they'd say, sure, come sit in on this show.
Got a couple of questions over here, stage to the left.
Hi, I just want to know, I love the show. I just want to know if you're going to make a book of it.
Well, the play is published by TCG, so it does exist.
Hi, I'm actually the stage manager for the show and for the performing arts department. And I'm always curious as I work on published scripts as opposed to scripts that are new works that are being written as we're rehearsing them. How you feel about the first time you rehearse something with the original cast, and how the blocking and how the concept of the show goes from what you originally see to what other adaptations, and how you feel about how other directors, and when you don't have your hands in the original concept of how you perceive them.
Well, it's interesting. It's like being a playwright. Part of finishing the play is letting it go and sort of giving it over to different cast of actors and directors. And it really does live and breathe very differently in every single theater. And I know that I can't be there to sort of nurse it from beginning to end. And that's why when I write the play, I try and be as explicit as possible about what elements I feel are very important. And if I don't put it in there, then it's open to interpretation.
Now, how much of, as I know, every playwright is different about once the play from the original stage manager's book gets published. How much of the stage directions that are actually in the script or in the published script are actually yours, or versus the stage manager's blocking notes?
Well, usually the stage manager's blocking notes are based on the director's direction and the playwrights. I mean, it's a mixture. It's definitely a mixture. I tend to leave a lot of my stage directions in, and not necessarily publish the director's version unless it's something I feel was a collaboration, or I feel like that's so brilliant that it has to be included.
Thank you.
One over here.
My question is, why exactly did you kill her parents? Because she could have divorced herself from her family in any way, but you chose to kill them. So.
Well, she chose, the character chose to kill her parents, because I think it's such a violent, it's a violent way of separating her out. In order for her to survive, I really in order for her to survive, I think she felt as though she had to eliminate what she perceived as the obstacle to her success. And the only way at the time she knew how to do that was to eliminate them by killing them off.
First, I just want to say thank you very much. Ruin was one of the most powerfully moving plays I've ever seen in my life.
Thank you.
My question is, how do your characters get developed?
How do they get developed?
How do you develop your characters? Do they come to you? Do they?
Well, I usually say it's my characters begin to haunt me, and when I'm getting up in the morning and they're talking to me, and when I'm sitting on the subway and they're talking to me, it's time for them to be written down. And so I also spend a lot of time doing exercises, developmental exercises in my characters, and trying to answer as many questions about them as possible. And I ask them the kind of questions that I would ask a friend. It's like, what are your favorite foods, and what are your politics, and what are your religion? And I ask my questions in my characters in my head as many possible questions so that I know how they would respond in any given situation. And a lot of times I will write monologues for all of my characters, even if those monologues never end up making it into the play, but I find that they're incredibly useful for me as a frame of reference.
Thank you.
How many of your plays that have been published you were part of, like cast or
I'm always part of the first production of every play.
Yes.
When things end, when it should end, the play is, okay, it really is the beginning for us. Either we read it or see it, okay? So what would you like for it to be the beginning of? What do you want us to discuss? Now that we've seen it, what do you think are the most important things for us to discuss?
That's actually, that's not for me, that's a question for you, because my work is done.
Bill?
First off, I just want to say I absolutely adore the play. Like today's my birthday, I think that this was
Happy birthday.
very fitting. Thank you so much. And I actually have two questions. My first question is, even though I'm a musician, I'm an aspiring playwright myself, and I'm looking to write a play someday in the near future. What advice would you give to someone trying to put some of what he has gone through before in a play that would be like as powerful as this one happens?
Just do it.
All right. My second question is that poem in the play that I know there was
A Flo's poem?
yes. What the ending? What is?
Well, he has no ending. He's unable to finish the poem because it's a work in progress.
Well, what would you say would be the end if you had to give?
I think there is no ending. That the poem will never end. He'll never be able to finish it because he will constantly be evolving. The culture will constantly be evolving. So I don't think that he would ever be able to find punctuation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
First of all, it was a pleasure to be reminded of being a second actor and going and sneaking into the theater with the crowd after the first act was done. It's a pleasure to see this.
Thank you.
Both the inception, your part, and the performance, their part, which is a lovely afternoon. You've dealt with a wide range of subject matter, and not every playwright is so adept at both comedy and drama. And how do you find that there's a rhythm going between comedy and drama? Do you want a preponderance of one, or find that a certain life situation has you lean more one direction than the other?
I usually write two plays at the same time, and so one is a comedy and one is a drama. It's sort of the yin and yang of my personality. And I just find that because I'm easily distracted, and rather than getting up from my computer and watching television or doing something else, I just take all of that energy and I put it into a very different play. And so it forces me to stay focused and stay writing.
When you're composing the play and structuring it, do you actually think in terms of big scenes versus little scenes and possible making it easy structurally and for it to change? You don't. The director.
Well, I did it in this play,
Okay.
and I know it moves very quickly, and there are a lot of scenes, and I thought I can't be worried about that.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would. I just thought I'm just going to write it, and I'm going to let that be the challenge of the scenic designer. But in the case of Ruin, it takes place in one spot, so I was much more considerate.
Right here up in the back.
I enjoy the play, and I hope to see Ruin one day. My professor is Kay Neal, and she actually, told the class to come and see the play. But I'm glad I came and see it. My question is for Ruin. While you were in the Congo, did you have any problems with the government over there, knowing that you were gonna expose something that was so brutal to these women?
Well, I'll tell you, when I went in 2004, I went specifically to go to the entire region, and the conflict was still going on, so we could only go to the border area in Uganda, and so we interviewed refugee women who were coming from Congo into Uganda. Just because at the time I felt it was too dangerous to go into Congo.
One more.
Are there any documentaries published from interviews in Congo?
I have all of my interviews that I did, but I've never published them. There are a couple of, I think there are one or two that you might be able to find online, which were posted, fragments of them, of women. But I can recommend, if you're interested, there's a very good documentary by Lisa Jackson about rape in the Congo, if you're curious about the subject.
Any other of your kids going to be here?
Next season, not this year, next season there'll be a play called By the Way, Meet Vera Stark, which is a comedy. Knock on wood.
You must know what theater is producing that.
Second Stage. Not yet.
I have a question about the Dream of the Fish. I was unfortunate that she wasn't, the big, did she get the cash?
Well, she does. She gets the big payload. Yeah, the blessing is that she gets abundance in her life.
One more question.
Weren't they really need a green card?
No, you know, pardon?
Like, he was Spanish, he could have been Italian, African, he was Spanish, and he needed a green card.
Well, where that line comes from is, at that moment, for Undine, is I wanted to show her ugliness, and I wanted a really, really biting line so that he can come back, and so that I see that as being the climatic moment in the play, in which she's sort of facing her true ugliness. And he throws it back at her, and she has to confront the choices that she's made in her life, which have been very ugly choices. I know.
Well, I'd like to, oh, we got one more second.
Since you've seen the play today, no offense, Tom. He's a great director. But since you wrote it, if you feel there's anything the cast should have touched on more, or you felt that we did touch, did we bring out what you wrote? Just curious.
Well, I just have to say this one thing. Some of my favorite lines were cut, but.
That's why I wouldn't let you say that.